No man, no man, no man under any condition other than self-defense has a right to raise his hand to a woman.
Good evening and welcome to Captions. I'm Andre Bohannon, your host, and again, thank you for choosing Captions. Tonight we have some very interesting segments on Captions. Starting off, as you may be able to see, I have a young lady that's sitting beside me and you may recognize her. Hopefully not because you had to use her services, but I have Martha Herm. Martha, welcome to Captions.
Well, thank you for having me.
Martha, what is your title and who do you now work for?
Well, I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Prevention of Abuse. However, some folks may know us or remember us as Women's Strength.
Yes.
But even before that, it was the Rape Crisis Line. So we've gone through lots of evolutions.
Well, I know when you came into the studio, I was so glad to see you because many, many years ago, I had a close working relationship with you. I think at that time it was Women's Strength.
Yes, right.
What kinds of services do you provide to our community?
Well, we're very unique in the state of Illinois in that we are the only agency that has under one roof services for domestic violence victims, sexual assault victims, elder abuse victims, prevention education in the schools in terms of violence prevention, and also a domestic violence perpetrator program. So we're doing a lot of things in the community.
And my contact with you was way back in the 80s and somewhat maybe in the 90s. From your own personal observations, have you found this problem to be on the increase, about the same, or have we decreased in terms of incidents of abuse?
Well, I don't think we have decreased, unfortunately. The number of people we serve every year has been pretty steady for about the last 10 years. We see 5,000 victims of violence who come to us every year. And the kind of services we offer are a safe shelter, you know, if a woman and her children are unsafe in their own home, they can come and stay with us. We also have transitional housing, which is sort of the next step. That's a HUD-sponsored program. They can stay up to 2 years in their own apartment. So that's kind of the residential part. But then we have a lot of support groups, counseling. We have offices at all the courthouses in the Tri-County area to help people get orders of protection. We investigate elder abuse allegations, and that goes out to a 6-county area. And we go out to the homes of seniors when we hear or get a report that somebody's been abused, neglected, or financially exploited in some way.
Unfortunately, at least in my mind, abuse is an equal opportunity act.
Absolutely.
That we normally think of it primarily toward women, but it can happen to men. It includes all races, all social economic groups, and all age groups. Am I correct?
Exactly. In fact, research will support that it cuts across all socioeconomic groups equally. So we're there whether you're 2 or 102, a male or a female, able to help.
And we normally think in terms of it as being physical abuse, but I'm certain that mental and psychological abuse is probably as prevalent, although those are things you can't see. You can see a battered woman with a black eye or something like that.
Correct.
But there's a lot of battering that goes on psychologically in terms of mental abuse. Can you make some comments regarding that and how that happens?
Well, that certainly is the basis. That's where it all starts, whether it escalates to physical abuse or not. And we often say that a broken spirit is harder to mend than a broken jaw or a broken arm. And so it does take a lot to help build the victims back up so that they are confident to make their own decisions, that they have the tools and skills and confidence again to get away from the abuse. That is the hardest part, actually, to overcome.
And at least in my mind, it's kind of a controlling factor where someone wants to control the other person's life by either isolating them in some cases from family or friends, or demeaning them to the point where they kind of feel like they're alone and nobody wants you anyway,
Right,
and if it
that's
wasn't for
right.
me, and those
That's
kind.
right.
Can you
You
make
got
any
it.
comments as it
Well,
relates to expanding on some of those thoughts?
Those are some of the tactics, exactly. You could add to that economic isolation. So, for example, the abuser does not let the victim handle any money, spend the money, have
Right.
any decisions in the money, you know, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, oftentimes children are used as pawns, children
Yes.
or pets. The abuser may threaten the victim saying, if you don't do such and such and such, you know, I might kill the pet, I'll take the child away, you know, or legal ramifications, you know, I'll divorce you, who would ever want you, and I'll keep the children, I'll keep the home, etc. But you're exactly right. Whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, elder abuse, it doesn't matter. The basis is power and control. Someone in a relationship wants to have complete power and control over another.
And I would assume that one of the signs would be perhaps excessive jealousy.
Of course.
In terms of that kind of behavior, checking on you all the time,
Yep.
not allowing you to do things
Right.
on your own,
Exactly.
or maybe even talking on the phone, or having friends come over, or allowing you to have friends.
Right, right.
I would imagine that would be a very depressing life, and I would assume that people go through periods of depression and anxiety as a result of
Absolutely.
those kinds of behaviors.
They do, and unfortunately sometimes victims do make some poor choices in how to cope with that. You know, sometimes it leads to substance abuse, all kinds of things. But again, that's where we're trying to help the victims get out of that situation and build their self-confidence so that they can get away and live a life free of violence. You know, it's particularly hard when the violence spills down to the children.
Yes.
Because if the abuser wants to have full power and control, it's not only going to be toward his or her partner, it's going to be everyone in the family. And a child growing up in that situation, well, first of all, is 1,000 times more likely to be a victim or abuser later when they're an adult.
I've heard that.
So that's why it's so important for us to break the cycle and get that stop so that doesn't happen in the future. And that's all about working with the abuser too in our Batters Intervention Program. That is all about helping that person see that no one has the right to use violence and abuse to get their way. And once we can kind of get that through their heads, then we work on coping skills, conflict resolution skills, because all relationships have differences and conflicts. I mean, we don't deny that. But there are some healthy ways to deal with that.
Do you at all, in terms of your programs or some of your programs, deal with the abuser, or do you just provide a safe place for the person who is abused? Do you try to do any kind of like group counseling between the two individuals to try to, and if a person that's listening tonight kind of feels that some of the things we're talking about is a part of their life, what would they do? Would they give you a call and talk with you, and then you would determine whether they need to move out of that situation,
Correct.
or they would
Correct.
determine?
Well, we never tell anybody what to do.
Right.
Because then we become the next abuser in terms of
Absolutely.
controlling another person. But we certainly go through all the options that could be available. We have a lot of resources, like in elder abuse, for example. The state does provide some monies to help, you know, whatever the situation might be, to help that senior. You know, with the housing, we have that for domestic violence victims, and that is HUD subsidized. So there's lots of opportunities to help. But in terms of couple counseling, we don't do that. It's working with the victim and working with the abuser.